It's like I'm one of those. I'm originally an angel. My original nature is angelic. And then I became one of the fallen ones. And I've been with the Earth experiment from the beginning. So I have literally, basically infinite incarnations as a soul, where my angelic nature was veiled that whole time. So even in the in between life, when I was planning out my next human, I'd never remembered that I was an angel. It was veiled completely until this lifetime. In this lifetime, well, it's not completely true. It was like in my last lifetime, yeah, in my last lifetime, I became God realized as a soul. And at that time, I also reawakened to my angelic nature. But my guru, who then also became my guru in this life, he asked me to come back to be with him in this life and to take the veil on again, to come in as if I had never been God realized and never been reawakened to my angelic nature and take on a certain amount of human karma and clear that, because it's like I had the choice to be an awakened guru in this lifetime and help people that way, or to take on all this human garbage again and work through. I mean, there's so much stuff I can't even talk about. There's stuff that I took on that just I can't share. I had to work it through, and once I worked it through, I was like, well, will I ever like write a book or share that? And it's like, maybe 50 years from now, society might be ready for that. I was a forerunner to just break it open. It's kind of like slavery. Like 100 years ago, you could have gotten tarred and feathered for standing up for slaves. And now today, it's a whole different, you won't get tarred and feathered most places for that. So that change in consciousness. So I was loaded down with certain things that are way advanced for today's world that will one day be commonplace. But if I were to write about them openly, I'd get death threats. People would want to jail me, this and that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And it's actually gotten worse in the last 10 years. I mean, it used to, but that's part of the process. It has to get worse before people start really waking up. And interestingly enough, a lot of the kids today just don't have any of that karma in them. Like to them, what I spent 50 years learning and healing, a lot of kids coming in today just they're already there. They just have it. They're living from it, and that's going to also change it. That's what's helping to raise it for the rest of the people who it's still a huge problem, because it's just fear. It's fear and ignorance and conditioning, all the usual stuff. So I was asked to just like carry a whole bunch of things. And, there's been some masters and highly evolved people I've been able to share it with along the way. And they like get it immediately. Like, oh, yeah, yeah, if you went public with that today, you'd get stoned. Yeah. But, yeah, yes and no. It's yes in the way that some of this stuff, like there are societies and civilizations who just live this way already. So in a way, they're like alien races. And I've visited, I've gotten shown that, like, especially when I felt like I was like all alone with some of this understanding, I'd get taken and shown how no, there's whole societies that like, this like they wouldn't be able to understand the lack of understanding in our world, because it's so much just part of how they live. So in that way, there's a similarity. But yeah, and I'm sure there's other people that, but for whatever reason, my guru said, like, if you'll take this on and then clear it as if it's yours until you get to the level where you're just absolutely clear that none of this was ever yours and you're clearing it for the collective. He just said that would be more powerful than if I was a God realized guru playing the guru role, where people could easily discount and say, well, he doesn't really know my experience. He's God realized, like, and I have just developed incredible levels of compassion because I've been living it. I've been carrying it. It's like my one friend who I was able to share. I mean, he cut like 25 years ago, really almost forced it out of me. He knew I was not being open about something very core and important. And I eventually got to go ahead to share it with him. And he was receptive, loving, supportive. But several times, and he's like, yeah, but if I was carrying what you're carrying, I would have committed suicide at least 5 or 10 times by now. Well, I was suicidally depressed most of my life, and I did try taking my life twice, actually, one right after the other, because I was successful the first time, and I got out, and it was incredibly blissful. And I met 2 guides, and they're like, "You don't belong here. What are you doing?" And yeah, so there's a whole story there, and basically they showed me I had to come back to finish the mission. But I was so angry. I mean, I was just the whole way back. And then waking up and taking a breath and my heart starting up again. And I was just so angry that I tried again the next day. I was like, no, even though I knew the truth of what they said, and, but I wasn't ready to accept it yet. And I tried again the next day. And all I succeeded in doing the second day was I completely paralyzed myself. No bowel control, no, like I was paralyzed. And my partner at the time stayed with me and held me as I took the drugs. And I made her promise not to call an ambulance if I didn't completely die. And, so she didn't realize that I was like completely paralyzed. But anyhow, she tried to give me a drink of water and I couldn't swallow it. So, because I was paralyzed. And so she almost drowned me. But she realized, and she turned me on my side and got the water out. And then she called 911. But no, I think she called poison control. But she told them what I'd taken and what I had experienced and was experiencing. And they said, well, he might have permanent brain damage, but, he's probably going to not die. And it won't matter if you don't take him to the hospital at this point. It's not going to be a benefit. So I did have seizures for a couple months after that, but no brain damage. And even the seizures were like, I mean, yeah, I just had an awareness that I was fine when they happened. It was like, I just knew I was fine and that it would eventually work its way out of the system. Yeah. And then I was going to do it one more time after that. The next day, again, I was going to do it, the hose out from the exhaust into the window of the car, looking out over the ocean on this cliff that I'd picked out. but I was driving down Highway 5 and I just started crying because, like, the truth, like, I suddenly knew that I was never going to try it again. Like, I knew I was surrendering. I was basically surrendering. Okay, you sent me back here for a reason. I really, really, really want to be back in that bliss, but okay, we got to do this. Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually very common. A lot of NDEers have that anger, confusion, questioning. When they come back, it's just like, ah. Even when they made the choice themselves, once they get here, it's like, oh my God, it's so dense here. It's just so dense here. Yeah, and for me, I mean, I had, my awakening was, my initial awakening was at 19. So, I had been studying and immersing myself really deeply in the spirit world and traveling to other dimensions before I did the suicide. So when I did the suicide, I was meditating, both times that I did it. I was meditating in my light body and moving myself consciously into the other dimensions and then giving the body the boot. But I was already like mentally moving myself there. And like the first time that I did it, like when I made the decision to do it, I mean, I know now it was all predestined that I was going to do that. But at the time, I didn't know that. I was facing my biggest fear. There was still a fear of death at that point, and I was facing it. And when I made the decision to actually do it, it was so liberating. I was free of that fear. And afterwards, like, I contacted my family afterwards and went back and lived with my parents for a while. And that's where the rest of my family was. And like my one brother who's a doctor, he was like so concerned. And I'm like, there's nothing to be concerned about. One, I don't regret what I did at all. It was amazing. It was exciting. I am totally glad I did it. I loved the whole experience of it. And like I have no regrets and it's like and then he was like, well, I have a friend who's a psychiatrist. Will you at least like talk with him once just to put myself in? So I did an interview with his psychiatrist friend. The psychiatrist was fascinated. He was like, he didn't want it to end because he was like, just like so intrigued and so interested in everything that led up to it and then what the experience was for me. Well, I find out later, like I wish he had just been open with me, but I found out later he had cancer. So he was facing his own death. And that's why he was like milking me for all it was worth, because he was like, help me. But, he felt he had a hold to his client, psychiatrist kind of. So he didn't share it with me. I'm like, oh, you stupid jerk. I could have helped you so much, but so anyhow, he reported back to my brother, oh no, he's fine. He's more than fine.